Could you explain what situational awareness means in the context of personal security?
Good question, CJ. And I underlined personal security because I said, what is that? Number one,
Hmm.
what is personal security? Securing oneself. Why secure oneself? So you could secure others.
Right.
Because as the agent in charge of your own executive protection detail, it is your duty and responsibility to secure yourself so you can secure others.
Right.
Not that they're incapable of doing it, but the thing is, what if, you're the primary, they're your PC, they're your precious cargo, like your family, for instance, or it could just be people you're with that are unrelated.
Right.
But somebody has to be the agent in charge of their own executive protection detail. So a big one is, make sure that we avoid putting ourselves in a bad place. Just
Right.
make, it's the best way to get out of a bad situation. Don't get there in the first place.
Right.
Because, like I said before, it's not so much the job of, let's say, my wife or my kids as it is my job to be the sentinel.
Right.
So that's what I got out of that one when it comes to, personal security. I've got to make sure that my act is together, that I am not out there flapping, that I've got my wits about me, that I'm paying attention to stuff.
Yeah.
That's my job. It's not their job necessarily.
All right. Well, let me ask you this way, because
Yep.
you've probably noticed this as well online. You're seeing more and more footage of new things that bad guys, we'll call them that, are doing
Mm-hmm.
in order to entrap people.
Yep.
Could be a vehicle blocking
Yep.
something. Could be the putting a baby stroller on the side of the road
Mm-hmm.
to try and get women
Bait.
or something to
Yep.
stop. They're trying to bait them. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when we say don't be in that bad place in the first place, we can all think, okay, I'm not going to go down to the south side downtown, right? I'm not going to go to
Mm-hmm.
the known bad areas, so I'm good. But
Right.
have times changed, and is
Mm-hmm.
it just better to always be in that mode anyway, even in places that you think are just safe? Personal security now, going into these situations, the context now is changing
Yeah.
because the threats are growing. The technology of criminality is expanding as much as the technology of anything is.
Mm-hmm. People have to keep in mind too. Once again, I'm going to say this again. I'm not paranoid, and not at all. I don't think that doom and gloom is lurking around every corner. I just don't want to get caught with my pants down. I'm prepared.
Right.
Also, we don't live in a more dangerous time now than before. The reason we don't live in a more dangerous time now is because everybody's watching. There's eyes everywhere. There's cameras everywhere. Everybody's got a supercomputer in their hands and they're filming stuff. So tactics remain the same, because what has changed is our ability to recognize bad stuff, because we're devolving. We humans, we're
Right.
devolving. So that puts us more in danger now because
Okay.
we're getting dumber. We're not as visually acute. We're not seeing things as much. We're because we are a lot of times stuck in a 45-degree syndrome, and we have relinquished primal defense mechanisms. We've relinquished them. So we're more susceptible, in my opinion, now to bad shit happening to us because we're complacent. We're fat, happy, flaccid, gelatinous, button pushers stuck in 45-degree syndrome.
All right. What are some daily habits we can adopt to improve our situational awareness?
Well, a big one is, avoid that 45-degree syndrome. Just understand, because we are susceptible to it. We're all carrying around the brain slug, right? I like that term. That's a Futurama term. The brain slug.
Right.
They were actually talking about brain slugs, but this is a freaking brain slug right here.
That's right.
Where everybody got dumb because they all had these brain slugs attached to their head. Another thing is, you position yourself so that you can remain in a good yellow mode. And I'm talking about like Cooper's color code, right? For white,
Right.
zombie mode, red, fighting for your life. So you position yourself so you can remain more omnicognizant. Omnicognizant.
Right.
So those are easy ones right there. What are some daily habits that we can adopt? And there's several more but I'll talk about them because they you kind of allude to that one again further on. But there's certain things, like I said, in the morning, for instance, when you walk out of your home in the morning, stopping at the threshold of your door and looking left and right. Don't just blindly walk out into your driveway. Now, these things, like you picking up information at a stoplight, you're just looking left and right. You're not your head isn't like on a swivel. You're not checking everything out, expecting danger to pop out of every car. The thing is, you're just a little more switched on. Yeah. And these things do, after time, become habitual. They just become a way of life. Yeah. It's a new normal. Right. Just look around at stuff. You're not trying to see stuff, and I'm going to say this a bunch of times. You're just looking. That's all.
Yeah. Right. And you recognize the anomalies because you're switched on, right? You're looking for those. Mm-hmm. So how can we teach our children then about situational awareness in a way that's appropriate and empowering rather than fear-inducing? Because we have to transfer this information to those, obviously, that we care about the most. And, kids are the most susceptible to not doing this.
Yeah. So number one, you never tell, the kids that they need to exercise situational awareness because that's going to go right over their heads. Right. You turn it into a game. When my kids were little, I just turned it into a game for them. And they loved it. They loved it. For instance, and I'm going to use this term, and people are always upset with this term. I call it the Walmart parking lot, the epicenter for disaster planning. Right. They'll say, don't go to Walmart. It's any parking lot. Doesn't matter where it is.
Right.
Any big parking lot. I would tell my kids, before they get out of the car, just to look around, see where we're parked. You back in, look around, see where we're parked, and then I would put one of them on point. I'm talking like at the time maybe a 6 and an 8-year-old, something like that. Right. So one of them takes point and leads us to the entry of Walmart, whatever it is, grocery store.
Sure.
And then once we enter, what I would tell them is, hey, this is our en route rally point. If we get separated, we're going to fall back here and link up. Right. And then deeper into the store, I would make another en route rally point. I say, hey, this is our new rally point. If we get separated, this is where we're going to link up. And then I would say stuff like, where's the closest emergency exit? And they'd look around, and they'd find it. And I'd say, all right, if we had to exit out of that emergency exit, in which direction, left or right, do we need to go to get to our car? And they'd think about it, and they'd pick up that answer quickly. We need to go to the right. That's like, boom, perfect.
Right.
Another thing, as we're exiting, let's say we're paying, I would say, once we exited the store, hey, what was the cashier's name? Because they were wearing a name tag.
Right.
So now the next time they're looking at more stuff because it's a game now. It's like a massive Kim's game.
Right.
When we're in the grocery store or whatever, they're just looking at stuff. They're picking up information, and they thought it was fun. They loved it. It was fun for them. So that's an easy one to do with kids because it's fun. It doesn't need to be scary, but you want them to look around at stuff and not be, encased in this bubble of non-awareness.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
Yep.
What common mistakes do people make that diminish their situational awareness, and how can we avoid these?
Zombie mode, bro. Number one. Most people are in zombie mode, walking around. They're in conditioned white, walking around the streets. Total freaking zombie mode. You don't need to be in orange or anything. Just trickle into the yellow. Just trickle into it. Head up high, looking around. And devices and faces while they're looking around. Right. You know what blows my mind today? Is the amount of adults I see crossing the street without looking both ways. Mm-hmm. It's amazing to me. It's amazing. This is something we teach kids at a very young age.
Right.
And adults are violating this simple thing we tell kids. Look both ways before you cross the street. Just look around. So another one is complacency for adults. It can't happen here, or it's never happened here, or this is a low crime area. It doesn't need to be crime. Somebody running with a knife or anything like that. It could be a runaway car.
Yeah.
It could be a piece of a building falling. I got a good friend he's still This is decades now. Tree fell on him.
Mm.
Hit him right in the head, and he's been he's had serious mental issues ever since.
Oh, wow.
And he's a switched on guy. Those are the big ones right there, though. Just get out of zombie mode, get the device out of your face while you're walking around, and don't get into that "it can't happen to me" attitude, because anything can happen to anybody at any time.
Right. Do you think people see this, what you're suggesting to take on this attitude of situational awareness? Do you think that they just see that as a burden?
Mm-hmm. Well, the number one that I get is, dude, you're paranoid. Or we get people from that don't live in the United States of America will say, oh, yeah, well, you should move out of that country because it's dangerous. We're not talking about necessarily about crime. Anything could happen. But that's the biggest one, is people will say that, I am paranoid. And I'm like, well, fine. You keep thinking that way. I'll protect your ass when shit hits the fan.
Right. Yeah.
I'm here for you, bro.
We love to learn things the hard way, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you talk about the balance between staying alert and remaining calm in a potentially risky situation?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, you want to ease yourself into the yellow. You should never be on high alert when it's not necessary, right? This is a potentially risky situation. What is a potentially risky situation? Anything can be. I went to the movies the other day with Rebecca. I hadn't been to a movie theater in years. And one of the things I do whenever I am in because that's a potentially risky situation. Potentially.
Sure.
So I am going to beeline for the emergency exit. I also know which direction I need to go to get to my car when I exit that emergency exit. And I'll position myself in the theater so I don't have to navigate through oceans of people, because the sheeple, they're going to be running the other way, more than likely. They're going to be boogieing the other way. 2 main exits out the back. I'm not going to go with the sheeple. So anything could be potentially risky. But I think it's important to go through potential scenarios in your head and come up with a plan. Like, what if this happens right now? Because then you're already ahead of the power curve. And now you could relax more too. You look around and you say, well, what are some of the things that can happen to me right here, right now? And then come up with a plan of action. And then if the event arises that you need to execute, you've already done the nug work. You've already done the prior planning. So now you can execute more efficiently and quickly. So that's a big one. And a lot of people that I've talked to start doing that now. Restaurant, whatever it is, wherever they are, just come up with 2 or 3 scenarios that can happen. Fire, robbery, whatever it can be. And then come up with a solution to those problems.
Good. All right. How does understanding human behavior contribute to our situational awareness? This is
great. So I kind of got on a soapbox on this one.
Good.
Understanding human behavior. Well, because people are devolving. People are more predictable. Because they're evolving, they're more predictable, right? They are the new sheeple. This new sheeple is way more complacent than the old sheeple. Right. And they're just going to follow the lead sheep or the shepherd, whoever's taking them there.
Mm-hmm.
The sheeple do not necessarily have the best answer. So take a moment, pause, and come up with a plan of action, because the sheeple, running with the sheeple may not be the best recourse, may not be the best course of action, because sheeple follow sheeple.
Sure.
Yep. So yeah, man, they're way more predictable. Human behavior. It's so funny, man.
All right. Can you share some strategies for maintaining situational awareness in crowded public places?
Yeah, this is, once again, you want to have a good time, in a crowded public place. Right. You want to just trickle into the yellow. You don't need to be uncomfortable. And the other thing people might do is they might try to see things. What happens when they try to see things is they get locked into target fixation. and now they're fixated on this thing that they saw because they were trying to see things versus just looking.
Right.
You look, you see, you pay it a little bit of attention, and you just keep looking. I mean, I have conversations with people all the time in crowded places, and I will look them in the eyes and then casually just glance around as I'm talking to them, and then lock them in the eyes again, and then casually just glance around. I'm just going to look. I'm not going to try to see stuff because you're going to get target fixated, and it's probably nothing. It's probably nothing.
Well, and I guess if you're fixated on that target, you're not looking, as you said, you're not looking at something else that
Right.
could surprise you. You've already
Yep.
noted the one thing that seems like an anomaly, so you know it.
Yep.
You can always come back to it,
You
but
could come back to it.
yeah, not relinquishing
Mhm.
the necessity to just keep the awareness comprehensive and not specific.
Right.
Okay, how does situational awareness vary in different environments, such as urban areas versus rural areas?
A big one is urban. You're more visual, right? In
Right,
urban, so visual takes priority. In rural, you want to hear things.
right,
The other one is in rural, you look for like color contrast, those kind of things. Color contrast and man-made in a natural world should really jump out at you. So like seeing beyond trees, and then you see something that's unusually straight or at an angle, it probably doesn't belong there. Or everything's green and you see something that's darker green or got a pinkish hue. Is there a pinkish hue on the cheek?
yeah.
Or just, so I think there's a big difference between that looking and hearing when you're in an urban versus a rural area. Those are
Right.
those are two big ones for me right there.
So, how do you, when you go into that sort of environment, like a New York City or downtown San Francisco or what have you, are you even on higher alert or
Because you're going to miss something. You want to be as relaxed as possible. You're going to miss stuff. If you're in an area like that and you anticipate doom and gloom or bad stuff happening, you're going to miss stuff. I'm going to relax, man. I'm going to chill, relax, and just pick up information as it is available to me. As it presents itself, I'll pick up that information. And this is something that we do. You practice this stuff, pick up information. And after a while, it becomes fun, and it becomes just a way of life, that
right?
new normal, because there's a lot to pick up. There's a lot to see. And there's so much audio and visual going on that you can't discern one thing from another.
Yeah.
So you just pick up what you can as best as you can.
Okay, so let's say you and Rebecca are walking down in a New York City street, right? Summertime,
Mm-hmm.
it's busy,
Yep.
and you want to check something on your phone,
Yep.
address or whatever. Do you stop right there on the sidewalk? Do you move and put your back against the
Yeah. Well,
wall?
this is a question for later too, but I'll answer it now. So yeah, uh, we can't avoid 100% of the time using our devices in an area like that. So of course, yeah, I always put my back to the building and phone up eye level. That way I could see everything around it. I've got good awareness around my phone. If I'm down, I've taken myself out of the fight.
Right.
If I can't my head down, I've taken myself out of the fight. So I'm going to back myself up to a building, and we're definitely, and Rebecca's really good at this. We're not going to be on our phones at the same time. If we need to check something like directions, and we
Hmm.
just did this the one of the times we went up to Charlotte, for
Okay.
instance.
Right.
We were looking for restaurants, and we were using Maps app,
Right.
because we went to one and it was closed. We said, well, let's just find another one. And so we used Maps app and, backed myself up to a building, found where we were going, and just navved from there. But just one of us had it out at a time.
Right. Yeah,
Yep.
that's smart.
I do that in grocery store too, because I take a picture of my grocery list that I put on the refrigerator. So I take a picture of it.
Hmm.
So when I'm in the store, I'll back myself up to something, hold the phone up, and check out the photo of the grocery list. I do it all the time.
You're paranoid.
Yep.
At the Harris Teeter, man.
Yep.
Um,
Well, you can't be Batman, small b,
yeah,
and help somebody else out if you're taking yourself out of the fight.
that's
I've
right.
never want to relinquish an opportunity to be Batman. Small b Batman,
Right.
small b.
Small b. All right. Are there certain exercises or practices you recommend to improve our sensory perception and response times?
See, now this is a tough one because, we're all hardwired differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I actually looked that up. Sensory perception, improving
Right.
sensory perception, and a lot of it had to do with diet, smoking, those kind of
Right.
things. Sensory perception. But there are other ones that, like for instance, exercise.
Ooh,
For yes, for hearing, for smell and sound, exercise can improve your sensory perception
I didn't know that.
on smell and sound. And then there's little. I've been a bird watcher all my life,
Hmm.
and that'll definitely help with sensory perception when it comes to being visually aware, and then looking for things like color contrast, movement, because you're looking for subtle movement. You're looking for subtle, you're listening for subtle sounds. So the bird watching for me really opened my eyes, pun intended, and helped me, and still helps me to this day, become very aware visually. Another one, and I've done this with the kids as well when they were younger, is play Kim's games, where you put a bunch of random objects on a butcher board, just the random junk drawer objects, and you like 20 of them, and you cover it up, you expose it for 30 seconds, have everybody look at it, you cover it back up, and a minute later have them write down what they picked up. Well, how much information can they pick up? And then you compare notes, and it's pretty fun too, seeing who gets the most out of those
Right.
20 items. And you're probably not going to get all 20 items, but if you get a bunch of them, then you could explain in detail like the colors or the numbers, like if there was a watch, what time did the watch have on it, those kind of
Right.
things. And over time, that type of awareness gets stronger because you train yourself to pick up more information quickly, which answers that, fine tune, or answers the response times.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. How can we effectively assess the potential threats in a new environment or situation?
All right. So new, I underline new. So this is a new environment. I underline that because I've been in those
Yeah.
positions. New town, new country, whatever it is. Now, here's where I'm going to kind of rely on the sheeple.
Mm.
I'm going to watch the sheeple's reaction. Number one, check out the reaction. But I'm also not going to get target fixated. Here's an example. New town, new state, because I used to travel nonstop. You're unfamiliar with the environment and the people. You don't know who's
Right.
a regular, who's not, this kind of thing. And then somebody behind you slams the door on the way in and yells. Yells. So immediately everybody's head whips and target fixated. So my head's going to whip the same, but immediately I'm going to look
Mm.
around to see other people's reactions immediately.
Mm.
And okay, so there's no alarm going off, no alarm bells with these people, and there's even a couple smiles. It's benign.
Okay.
This is something they're used to. This is somebody they know, whatever it is.
Right.
The other sheeple are still fixated right there. They're like, what is this thing that just happened? Or it could be a big bang, a smash,
Right.
somewhere. Smash. Everybody's going to look in that direction, but I'm going to assess quickly, and then I'm going to do a quick peek around as well. Because number one, it could have been something that everybody's used to, like, for instance, a dumpster
Right.
slamming, the lid of a dumpster. Everybody's used to it. But for me, this is a new place. Baboosh! That dumpster lid just slammed down. I'm going to look there and then look back to see, number one, other sheeple's reactions, and look to see also if it's a diversion, a ruse. I'm going to pay attention to the whole picture. But if all the sheeple are alarmed, then I need to reassess too.
Yeah.
I need to reassess and come up with a course of action that doesn't belong to them, because I am not going to follow the sheeple, because the sheeple are probably wrong.
even in the new environment. The new sheeple are wrong too. The new sheeple and the
Yes.
old sheeple, they're all wrong.
Yep. 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 New and old.
All right. Can you discuss the role of intuition or gut feeling in situational awareness and how to fine tune it?
Intuition is a gift that we are born with, right? Intuition.
Right.
The thing is, it's a defense mechanism that's hardwired into our primal being.
Yeah.
It's there for a reason, but more and more we are relinquishing these primal defense mechanisms. Because fat, happy, complacent, flaccid, gelatinous button pushers. So we're relinquishing all of these primal defense mechanisms. You don't want to do that, man.
Yeah.
Your gut is probably not wrong. I think it's important that we don't ignore or relinquish intuition. Trust yourself. You're right. If it speaks, listen. And if necessary, take immediate action. Sometimes immediate action is gut feeling bad, cross the road. Go that way. Blauer speaks on this one too. He's done a study where he's interviewed tons of people who were attacked, who were victims of an attack. And to the person, every one of them, I forget what the study is, I'm paraphrasing here, said prior to it happening, they had a bad feeling. Every one of them. Prior to it happening, had a bad feeling. There's so many people that are victims of, like petty crime, because they're walking down a sidewalk and they see two people approaching them. They don't want to cross the street. Number one, because they're saying it's probably nothing, and I don't want to seem paranoid, and they might get the wrong idea. I might be profiling them or something like that. You know what I mean? Don't ignore that crap, man. Your gut's right. It's right. Yeah, it's a shame, man, because most people are completely just relinquishing primal defense mechanisms. Intuition is a gift.
Yeah.
Don't shit can it.
I guess like anything, right, the more you start to pay attention, right, hearing something like what you're describing and starting to become aware, it can grow by itself, and you're going to figure out ways that can develop for you. So just get started. Okay, how can we ensure that we don't let distractions like our phones reduce our situational awareness? Put it away.
Well, we talked about this somewhat, right? So it's a necessity. Let's say you have to use your phone. You got a text, a call, back yourself up to a building, hold it up high, and just look around. And you will not look paranoid. Just look like don't look like everybody else.
Right.
But you're not going to look like you're paranoid. I'm going to use the pub as an example again. If Rebecca and I are sitting at our table outside, one of us might need to get on our phone for something. Like, let's say we want to play touch tunes. Only one of us are going to do it. We're not going to both search for something at the same time. Right. Only one of us. And it's an unwritten rule. I never have to talk to Rebecca about it. Ever. If we need to get on our phones for something, do some research, or maybe even show somebody a picture, we're both not going to do it at the same time.
Right.
We're just not going to. How often is it, now it's a shame, man. I mean, I've got a folder, the On Point folder on my phone. How many photos are on that? I still add to it all the time.
Do you really?
I call it On Point, and it's people out and about in groups, all on their phones or devices, all of them. And there'll be families out to dinner, a family of 4 or 5, every single one of them, the parents, 3 kids, all on their devices.
Wow.
Or walking down the sidewalk, husband and wife, both in 45-degree syndrome, looking down, and they've got 2 small kids in tow. What the hell good are you? You're no good to anybody. So the question is, how can we ensure that we don't let distractions like our phones reduce our situation awareness? Don't let them distract you. That's the answer. The answer is in the question. Don't let it distract you. You have to understand too, because it's necessary at some point, right, to get on devices out in public. Right. You have to understand, and you have to remind yourself that momentarily, I am switched off, man. I'm out of it for a few seconds here. Just admit it to yourself.
Okay, can you talk about situational awareness in the context of driving and road safety?
I like to like in traffic when I'm stopped or as I'm past cars, I always glance in.
Yeah.
I always glance in to see what the driver's doing. And it's my observation, and I'm going to boldly state this. It's an opinion, but I'm going to state it as fact. Most drivers are distracted nowadays, most of them.
Yeah.
Do you know that? Here's a statistic for you. I think it's 11 teenagers a day die because of texting and driving. We
Oof.
don't give a shit about it. We're because it's not polarizing. It doesn't meet somebody's narrative. So we don't talk
Right.
about it. 11 a day. That's teenagers. It becomes an imperative that if you're driving your car, that is your job to drive. If you've got other people in their car, that as the agent in charge of your own executive protection detail, that's your limo. That is your job to drive. You're not talking on your cell phone or definitely not texting and driving. If you're texting and driving while you're on your cell phone, you're an idiot. We are not multitaskers, we human beings. We're not capable of performing two tasks simultaneously. Cognitive thought. We could task switch or task stack or perform certain tasks intuitively. Think of it this way, too. This is the one thing I talk to people about all the times. On those roads, 55, two direction, the only thing separating you from that car coming at you at 55, 60 miles an hour are two thin lines of yellow paint. That is it. The amount of times that I've saved my own ass because I've seen drivers cross the yellow line. Over the line! Another movie reference there. You can't have that, and they'll try to differentiate. They'll tell me, their argument against that would be, well, you're changing dials on your radio and you might be talking to a passenger or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, but you're in the here and now, it's a different thing. Because when you're on a phone, you're disconnected from anything that's in your car because you're talking externally to somebody or texting somebody externally that's not with you right now. You're not in control of your cognitive faculties at that point.
Well, like
You
for
are
example, well, yeah, I was
you are
actually,
switched off,
I
bro.
was going to ask a different version of the same question by saying your car will connect to your phone,
Right,
and so the calls will come through the stereo, right, the speaker
right.
system,
Through the stereo.
so is that different than talking to somebody
It's
sitting
it's
next to
it's
you?
definitely better. It's better,
So in other words, holding the
when your
object,
hands free, right? When
holding
your
the
hands free,
object
because
is the big
right,
difference.
but now you're in the here and now. That's a part of your vehicle now. It's part
Right.
of your space. It can potentially cut down on hazards because you're not as distracted. I'm still not a fan of any when I'm driving. Dude, you see me drive, I'm like 10 and 2, man. If I have
Right.
somebody else in the car, I mean, I'm 10 and 2 and I am focused on the road. I'm looking at every car coming at me, every single one. And that's another thing that becomes habitual, becomes a way of life. I'm looking at every car that's coming at me. And this is also force of habit. I'm also looking to see if there's a potential out on the other side. If this guy crosses the yellow line, can I avoid or evade this potential disaster by making a beeline for the tree line?
Right.
Just going off the road and driving through a fence or some hedgerows instead of the other option, head-on collision.
Yeah.
It's a habit for me, and it doesn't take that much work.
No.
It really doesn't take that much work. You do it. It's just like any skill, right? You think about it until you don't have to think about it.
Yeah. Oh, we already talked about the how can we employ situational awareness techniques while maintaining respect and avoiding profiling or bias.
So don't look, but see, right? That's a big one. And you got to remember that you are the agent in charge of your own executive protection detail, but you're not a Secret Service agent, bro.
Right.
You don't have to freaking, be in the orange. You're just barely in the yellow. Sometimes you've got to risk hurting somebody's feelings. Here's an easy way to get out of it. Let's say ATM. So your back is exposed, right? So your back's exposed, you've got nobody watching your back, and there's somebody behind you.
Right.
It's more than likely just benign, but I'm not going to say, it's probably nothing. I mean, this guy's a little close. I'm going to turn and look and maybe say, hey, how's it going? Something like that. Just disarm it.
Right.
Just as easy as that. Or you could do a stupid joke and say, well, I hope I have some money in here. Something like, whatever it is.
Right. All right. Going back to number 14, how
Yeah.
does being in a group affect our situational awareness, and what can we do to ensure collective awareness?
Well, so affect, I circled, how does it affect? Because that could be a positive or negative. It could positively affect it or negatively affect it, right?
Right.
Our collective situational awareness. Me, personally, it doesn't affect me at all. It is good, though, if I'm in a crowd and I have another one of me around.
Right. Sure.
I'm like, all right, good. I don't have to be on point. I don't have to. I'm not necessarily the agent in charge right now. I've got somebody else who's also just checking stuff out. He's looking.
Sure.
He's not trying to, see things. So I don't have any advice for like a group of sheeple because they're just going to do their own thing, man. They're just going to
Sure.
all be on their cell phones, and completely switched off. Nothing could happen to me. Meanwhile, a car careens over the curb and into the shrubbery.
Right.
That's happened. That's happened to me at the pub too. Car back up, and I saw it coming. I was like, "Hey, this is potentially bad."
Mm-hmm.
Car backs up, boom, right into the fence where we sit there at the pub.
Yeah.
I mean, it was years ago, and smashed the whole thing over. They were, drunk, but I saw it before it happened. Nobody else did.
Okay. Can you share some specific examples where improved situational awareness can prevent potential dangers or threats?
So let's go back to the Walmart parking lot, right? The epicenter for disaster planning. Once again, people, this could be any parking lot. Back in, and I always take a moment to pause, man. I just look around before I get out of the car into vehicles. And you'd be surprised at how many times you see somebody looking back at you. And 99% of the time, it's benign. It's an old man waiting for his wife to get his prescription meds from the pharmacy. But in the event you do catch a would-be scumbag, when you lock eyes with him, you've relinquished that dude's ability to attack because you've taken the element of surprise from him.
Right.
It's gone. And predator, human, just like predator, wild, needs the element of surprise to conduct an effective attack. Another one is, for instance, don't get carjacked at a gas station. First off, if your car gas tank is on the opposite side of the driver's side, which I don't know why they build cars like that,
right.
Shut that door and take your keys out of it.
Yeah.
And then that's another place. When I'm pumping gas and I'm looking around.
Yeah.
I'm just standing up waiting for it to fill up. And then we also talked about the ATM, so those are three good examples of how that awareness can prevent potential dangers or threats.